Well, my first guest today is coming off a rousing performance and appearance in his homeland of France at the Olympic Games in the men's golf competition last week in Paris at LLF National. He came within a whisker of standing on the podium and receiving a medal after a spirited final round of 63. And he's within a whisker of qualifying for the FedEx Cup playoffs with one event remaining in the regular season this week at the Wyndham Championship. Victor Perez, part of the field in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hello, Victor. Thank you for some time. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been definitely busy to say the least.
I guess let's start with the opening tee shot, which counted. It was not a ceremonial tee shot for anyone that wasn't watching. What was the energy like, the atmosphere, and what was the level of nerves that you were feeling at that point?
Yeah, quite high to be fair. I think every professional golfer can agree the first tee can be quite a daunting place. But I told James, my caddy, when we're on the range, usually I try to get there as late as possible to not try to just ruminate on the tee basically and think of all that could go wrong. But I told him when we're on the range, I was like, I'd really like to actually be there 10 minutes before and really soak in all the atmosphere. I think it was one of the only shots that in my career that I'll probably never get to hit again. I'll never get to hit the opening tee shot of the Olympics in my home country ever again. Whereas, the opening tee shot in the Masters, opening tee shot in the major, you'll probably get to hit that again. But that one was definitely special. So I wanted to be there and really soak it all in, and having all the French fans there at 9 o'clock in the morning singing the national anthem and cheering me on was definitely quite emotional and strong. And I just wanted to soak it all in and manage to hit a decent tee shot as well.
I'm sure you played out what that was going to look like and feel like in your head many times prior to actually stepping onto the first tee. How did the expectations for that moment align with what you felt once you got there?
It was definitely busier than I expected. I think the everybody agreed the turnout and how the crowd was there throughout the 72 holes for me personally, but just even for some of the players. I think the turnout of the field really made it exciting, and I think everybody was a little bit surprised by how many people were there and how much people cheered people on and players on and cared and were willing, balls in the hole and stuff. So it was definitely a little bit more intimidating than I expected it to be, but nonetheless, a better surprise than if it would have been the other way around.
You know what was really cool, Victor? It was a very intense competition, obviously. Scotty Scheffler and Xander Schauffele and yourself and all of the men trying to get onto the podium. But as you mentioned, Scotty and Xander were over there on the range boosting you up as well. It seemed like the element of the competition was put aside in support for one another, everyone that was there. That was cool.
Yeah, I think, it's never often that it is the case. I think everybody's kind of like, is always, I think in the men's world, at least happy for, competitors to play well. And I think everybody's, be the first one to greet each other when someone's won. And you see it every week in the locker room when whoever won the week before, you generally say, oh, well done, congratulations, great finish. But I think the format definitely changed with only three people medaling and, kind of being a kind of race to the top and not something where you can look back and be like, oh, ninth's better than 13th and, making the cut's better than missing the cut. I think it was a bit more genuine in a sense that, guys that were out of it, after two or three rounds, we're kind of just hoping for just energy, good atmosphere, a good round at Golf National. And then, they knew there was nothing really to play for. So it was great that, the purity of the event was there and there was never kind of like back thoughts about like, oh, if I shoot 64 today, I can still finish 35th, which gets me X amount of points, which gets me X amount of FedEx Cup, blah, blah. It was a little bit more like, let's just play golf and may the best man win.
You played a lot of prestigious junior events at Le Golf National growing up and competing at the junior level. Did any of those memories come bubbling to the surface for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because the place has changed obviously over time. I think where the media center was. I was telling the people post rounds like this used to be a massive putting green, and I remember being 12 years old. Walking out of the hotel, that's on site, and then just having putting games till dark. And the course definitely has shook some pretty bad memories, to be honest, because the course is really daunting with the finish, the amphitheater style, 15 to 18, and all the hazards and everything that comes into play. And I just remember being 13, 14, 15, and just filling those lakes with balls, left, right, and center. And it was definitely a good thing to come back and play those holes actually really well for once. But yeah, the place is very emotional because you're 12 years old, everything matters way too much. Every shot's way too important. And, every shot that you hit on the course has so much more meaning than it needs to be. And, looking back in hindsight, you get quite scarred from it in a sense, just like, some shots in your career define you in a good and a bad. Those shots have been hit many times, and it was good to come back and look at it through a different lens. And being obviously a little bit more relaxed ever since I'm 31 years old now and playing on the PGA Tour, and very fortunate to do what I do. But if somebody would have told me 12-year-old Victor, like, oh, you've put three balls in the water on an 18 and made a 12, but 20 years from now you'll be here, you know trying to get a medal for France, I would have probably taken it, obviously.
That's an amazing backstory. Thank you for sharing that. What was your competitive approach on the final day, Victor? Because you were pretty far off the pace going into Sunday.
Yeah, I just knew that it's not a course that you can particularly like attack, all out. There's still some daunting shots. I think they used the front right pin on two, which has seen so much drama over the years. It's not a pin that you can particularly be ultra aggressive to. There's still shots that are very difficult, and you have to respect the course and kind of hope, in a sense, that the numbers will fit, the putts will drop, and then the rounds will kind of just like take itself on. But it's not something that you can just go and say, "Oh, I'm just going to hit it right at the pin on every hole and hope it works," because the course is not going to allow you to do that. So I was quite far back, and then once I start making a bit of the run on the back nine, I kind of got a little bit more into the conversation, even though I was quite far back. And you kind of know that there's a lot of two shot swings, holes basically at the end, whereas, some guy can just hit in the water, make a six, and you can have a wedge and make a three. So there's a fair bit of separation at the end that was created by, the way the course is designed, which, gave me a smidge of a chance. But, they're the best players in the world. And a lot of guys were also able to make some birdies at the end.
What a stretch it was. 3, 3, 3, 3, 2. 6 under par for Victor Perez through 5 holes of the back nine to get within a shot of the podium. The crowd was chanting, Victor, Victor. The energy was pulsating. I got goosebumps just thinking about it. I can't imagine what it was like in the arena for you, Victor.
Yeah, it was great. I think, definitely, I believe it makes it easier when the crowd's with you. You have, every putt you're thinking, oh, if I make this, I can't imagine how big the roar is going to be. And then you go to the next one, then the next one. And I think the in between shots was quite easy because you ended up just hitting, then listening to the chants and listening to the energy that the people were giving me. And then it was your turn to hit again. So there wasn't too much time to think about like, oh, I'm three back, I'm four back, I'm one back. It was pretty straightforward mentally, which I felt made it easier personally. But yeah, it would have definitely been amazing if I would have held the 35 footer on the last, but maybe another time.
As a player, I'm curious what your assessment is as it relates to the potential growth of the game, because it seems like Olympic golf, now in its third iteration after being reintroduced into the games, is really gained some traction, is really cemented as part of the Olympic experience. How is this going to help promote and grow the game further in your estimation, Victor?
I think it's going to be quite big. I think, the first two editions of the Olympics were definitely tarnished by the current situation at the time, whether it was in Rio, whether it was in Tokyo with the COVID. There was a lot going on. And I think this was really kind of like the first time that it was kind of like everything was reasonably normal, everything to take with a grain of salt. But the best player were here. It was a course that had been seen on the international scenes with the Ryder Cup in 2018. So I think the setting was kind of like made for it to be a great event. It came down to the last few holes, which is everything everybody was hoping for as well. Um, and like I was saying earlier, in different interviews, I think when I was a kid, nobody really dreamt of winning the Olympics because it wasn't a thing. You remember watching Tiger win the Masters '97. You remember someone winning the Open. You remember someone winning the U.S. Open. It was about that. And seeing so many kids at the event, French kids at the event, from the age to 5 to 15 to any age, really, where your dreams are starting to being made, where you're starting to believe like, oh, this would be cool. I can be like Scotty Scheffler. He gave me his ball. I can be like Rory McIlroy. He gave me something. He gave me a hat. Whatever it might be, gives you that sense to where it becomes a lot more real. And you're really hoping that, the kids now look at the Olympics thinking like, wow, this is cool. It's not just about putting on the green jacket or winning the Win America or whatever it might be. In the professional men's world, it was always about the majors, the big event, winning at, Bay Hill, winning at Memorial, winning the BMW Championship at Wentworth. It was about that for us Europeans. Whereas I think this event has definitely changed. And I think the next two being in LA, which is a massive golf country, obviously. And then the next one being in Australia, which obviously has a massive golf community with major winners and a lot going on, is definitely going to help to where, in a sense, the Olympics in Australia are 8 years from now. Someone can very well be 14 years old, be 22 by the time the Olympics rolls around, thinking like, oh, wow, I may make that team. And for all you know, it's someone who has massive potential and could actually end up winning it. So the dreams can be created now and actually become real not far from now.
Are you comfortable with 72 holes of stroke play competition as a format, or would you like to see a new component or wrinkle introduced in Los Angeles in 4 years?
Uh, it's difficult to say. I mean, obviously it worked for me, so I'm hoping for the same. But there's been plenty of stroke play events where I've played terrible, so I would have hoped for match play. So I guess it's easy for me to sit here and tell you like, oh, it was great. I think obviously kind of a head-to-head format with like maybe a team match play would obviously bring kind of like a country to country animosity, which I think is quite good for entertainment, because you could have, you know, US playing Canada, you could have France playing Britain, you could have, kind of like those past, countries, histories in sports exposed a little bit more, which could create a little bit more drama, a little bit more tension and better entertainment for the fans, which I think is what's important at the end of the day. But I'm not the one making the decisions. If they want to do 72 holes, they do 72 holes. If they want to do, I think straight to match play would be quite brutal because you have people coming from all over the world, and in fencing, maybe you get knocked out right away. Maybe in this sport you don't, and you always think about like, well, these people come from miles and miles away to Paris to compete, and they've trained for 4 years, and in 2 minutes, their whole dream shattered. So, obviously that's the ruthlessness of sports, which would be difficult in golf. And, if they want to do stroke play and then match play, if they want to keep to match play, keep the stroke play, so be it. But there's definitely formats that may be explored. But again, I'm not the one making the shots on that.
Well, those are all great ideas. We are in the entertainment business. I think everything is on the table for LA in 4 years. So now you turn your attention to the Wyndham Championship, final event of the regular season. You're 71st in the FedEx Cup race. 70 players qualify. How do you sort of block out the bigger picture and just go out and play and let the results do the job for you this week?
Yeah, I think in a sense, it would be kind of like impossible to kind of just at least for me personally, I'm quite an emotional person, to kind of just be able to put everything aside and be like, oh, I'm just gonna play this week like it doesn't matter. Like obviously it does matter. I think the fortune I have is that I can reflect on a similar situation that happened like when I was on the Challenge Tour in 2017. I was, I think, 15 or 16 going into the last event, and obviously the top 15 were able to get their card for the DP World Tour the following year. And I just remember feeling like, everything mattered way too much. And, if I didn't get my card, it was going to be the end of the world. And ended up playing terrible that week, not getting my card and having to play on the Challenge Tour the following year. And, playing well enough the following year to then get my card for 2019. And at the time, I just remember like flying back from the final in 2017, thinking like, I can't believe this. I worked all hard all this year, blah, blah, blah. And then, I wasn't able to kind of pull through and make it. And looking back in 2019, 2020, 2021, I'm like, thank God I didn't get my card because, my game wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared enough. And I probably would have had a terrible 2018 on tour. And I think it helped me with my development. So it's always easy to connect the dots looking back and much harder to do it in the time being. And, if it were to happen and I played next week in Memphis on a course that I've played before, then great. But if it doesn't, I'm sure something great will come in the future anyway. So I think past experience allow me to look at this week with a little bit more of a perspective, a little bit, maybe a little bit easier on myself. And I think that just comes with experience. I think if I was, fresh out of college and 22-year-old, this week would mean everything. And if I bogey the first hole, I would feel like the world's falling apart. But in a sense, I've learned that it's going to be fine either way. But the competitive nature in me obviously wants the good outcome.
It's a healthy perspective. I know you have a birthday coming up, September 2nd. You turn 32. It would be nice to celebrate with the Tour Championship in Atlanta, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would for sure. I think my birthday being at that time of the year, and the PGA Tour finishing towards the end of August, early September, fits really well. So I hope for some great birthday for the next 10 years.
Victor, nice to catch up with you and get to know you a little bit. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
great
you so
week in
much.
Greensboro. Best of luck to you.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you very much.